All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Limitless MD. I'm your host, Vikram Raya. And today, guys, we're going to go deep into real estate, mindset, success, and what it takes to win in this economic cycle. You guys ready? Let's rock it. What if you could reclaim hours of free time each week, create legacy building wealth, and devote more energy to your passion projects without giving up on your career as a life-saving MD? My name is Vikram Raya, functional cardiologist, high performance coach, and real estate expert. And I'm here to give you the tools, strategies, and solutions you need to transform your life so you can unlock your limitless potential and achieve greatness, all the while freeing up your precious time. Welcome to Limitless MD. Let's dive in. I have my good friend, Michael Holman. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Vic. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's get right into it, man. I heard from a little bird out on the street that you were on a phone call with some big players. Is that true?
I don't know if I would say a phone call with the big players. It was more like a phone call to the big players. So definitely have some interesting stories about that. Just sort of what it takes to really start, achieving your dreams and making things happen. Especially when you don't have necessarily a clear path forward. So it's a very interesting story. I can go into detail.
Let's get right into it, man. My listeners are successful doctors, physicians, entrepreneurs, and investors, and they are looking for the cutting edge in life. They want to succeed in wealth, health, mindset, business, and freedom. So let's get into it.
Absolutely.
What is your killer? Where do you get your killer mindset from?
That is something I always want to attribute it to something that, something great that I did. And sometimes I almost feel like I was just like born with it, right? I have this ability, or I have this desire to just be relentless. That's kind of the word that describes me. Most of the people that I know, no never means no to me. No, it just means maybe, or find another way. Right. And that's really what's happened. I mean, that goes along with this story on trying to, having to kind of forge your own path. Because I find that a lot of people that are really successful, right? A lot of just high income earners in general, they oftentimes have had this pretty set path for them. And they almost go haywire when they start thinking about, maybe this isn't the right path, or what I'm trying to do, or maybe I'm not fulfilling everything in my life that I want to be fulfilling. But a lot of these high income earners, and I was on that same path, right? It's go to a top tier university, get a prestigious degree, go work in either a prestigious industry or for a prestigious firm, right? Who has a very set path. I mean, I went and worked for Ernst & Young right out of college, and it was very set, right? You are a staff for 2 years. You are a senior for 3 years. You are a manager for 2 years. You're a senior manager, right? And you have this set path. And, I had to kind of break myself free out of that. And that's kind of what developed this mindset for me. Is I kind of went into that, and I was almost the opposite. Like most people like that. And I kind of went haywire in that environment. I was like, you mean there's a set path, and in the end, I make $900,000 a year, the average income of a partner at Ernst & Young. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's cool, but you're telling me I have to wait 14 years to do that. It's like, I cannot sit here with these set paths. Like I have to go out and I have to kind of forge my own way. I have to figure out how to do these things I've always wanted to do, because I'm not somebody who's going to sit there and wait for 14 years and just follow the status quo. And so I find that a lot of people are almost the opposite, right? You get the doctors, you get the bankers who've been in there, they've had this set path, and now they're thinking about switching, and they kind of go haywire.
So Michael, there's a lot of correlates from what you're saying. So, you know what? I think comfort kills drive. And I've been blessed to know so many smart people in my life. And what I've noticed is they crush it in elementary school, they're smart in middle school, they're excellent in high school. Then they get to a good college. Some are great colleges. Some are like elite Ivy colleges. Then they get a grad school degree or some kind of professional degree of some sort. And then they get into even a better fellowship or residency, or if they're working, they get a really good job. But something happens in their 30s. They lose steam. They've won the accolades. They've been praised by everyone they know, and then they chill. And that is where I kept on going. I felt like, all right, what's next? Right. And that's what you're saying, Michael. You're like, what's next? And that what's next is what I want to ask you about. Where did you get no means find another way? Where did you learn to become relentless? What is it? I don't take that you were born with it. I think something was triggered, something was developed, something was forged inside you. Where did that come from? And how do my listeners, how does this tribe reignite their own relentlessness?
Yeah, I have to attribute a lot of it to my father, right? So Ken Holman, he started the company that we work for. He's the founder. And a lot of it comes from my childhood, right? So I was blessed with parents that didn't, they were very hands off, but they also pushed me to do things outside of my comfort zone, even from a small age, right? I remember, perfect example. I'm in sixth grade, and I remember talking to my mom and my dad saying, you know what? I really wish we had a skate park in my city. I was big into like rollerblading and skateboarding in sixth grade. I'm a 12-year-old. And I'm like, I'm sick of having for you to drive me across to this other city to go to a skate park. And you want to know, this is the mindset or the attitude that I was raised in. My dad looks at me and he goes, all right, you want a skate park, son? We're going to go to the next city council meeting and you are going to present to city council on why you should have a skate park, right? And so here I am. I'm a 12-year-old, right, getting ready to go to present to the city council. And obviously, they were all nice about it and whatnot. But talk about getting out of your comfort zone right from the beginning, right? And that's kind of where I started to learn and realize and say, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what you've done or haven't done. You can start to do these things that make impacts, and you can start to become, relentless in what you want. Because I started seeing, as I had that mindset growing up, and then as I got older, I started seeing all these people that were going off the path, right? They were like you said, they had received all these things, but they changed. Something triggered in them, and I saw them being really successful, and I started finding a correlation, right? It was the people who were relentless, who didn't take no for an answer. Those are the people that really started to thrive in their life, and even at an early age, right? I mean, you look at me, a lot of people, especially when I got started, right? So I've been in this business for 5 years. And I spent the first 2 years just trying to basically look older than I was for those first 2 years. And that's really what, because people would look at me and say, well, you're just, a 20-something-year-old, you have no idea what you're talking about. But I had that relentless mindset, and it just kind of got more and more ingrained. I mean, correlate what happened when I was 12 to what happened when I first started at this company. And we got a real estate development project. We were just coming up out of some hard times, and we needed to raise $10 million. We needed $10 million of an equity investment. And I looked around to everybody. I said, how do we raise $10 million? And everybody looked at me and said, go figure it out. We don't know. And that's when I started. I just started with what I knew, right? And I worked from there, and I said, well, I need $10 million. I just come from EY. I was like, I know Goldman Sachs has $10 million. I bet Blackstone has $10 million. I started creating this list. I even did a Google search, right? Who has money, essentially. And I just started cold calling these people. And so here I am, right? I almost have no idea
man, I understand this. You wanted $10 million for a real estate development project. Again, for those of guys who don't know, Michael Holman is a successful real estate developer, one of the best in the West Coast, on the western part of the country, and then he does it with his father and his brother. And the interesting thing is he's younger than everybody in the company, but he thinks outside the box. And you're saying $10 million instead of saying, hey, we can't do the project, or let's pass, or let's get a bank loan. You're like, let me figure out how to get it. And then you started calling people like Blackstone, and let people know who Blackstone is. And who Goldman are. Like, who are these people?
Absolutely. So Goldman Sachs is one of the largest, they might be the largest investment bank in the world. You also have Blackstone, which is one of the largest private equity groups in the nation, in the world, really. And so they do, their first fund was $1 billion fund. That was fund one for Blackstone, right? So that's these huge monster groups, right? And that's just kind of the attitude that I've had and that has been instilled in me from a young age is that there's always a way, right? And the funny thing is it never really happens the way that I initially think it's going to happen, right? So here I am, I'm calling Blackstone, I'm calling Goldman Sachs, and this is like, I'm calling the receptionist. Hey, who do I talk to who can like invest $10 million with me? Right. So 99% of them, let me say it, 95% of them didn't even respond, right? They didn't bother even getting back to me. 4% just berated me and was like, you have no business calling me. Stop calling me. But you know what? I had one or two people that I didn't end up doing the deal with, right? I didn't get $10 million from these guys, but they gave me just enough nuggets of information that I was able to pivot some things on the project, adjust some things here. And that led to another design change in the projects, which led to another connection, which ultimately led to us getting that entire project done. And it looked a little bit different at the end, but it was the domino effect, right?
So
Where
you got the money in the end though, right?
it got the money in the end, right?
And the deal got done.
And the deal got done, right? And
Boom.
sometimes that's what you have to start off with is you just start with what you know and you get outside of your comfort zone and you say, you know what? I have no clue what I'm doing, but neither did anybody else when they got started, right? And so I'm going to figure it out and I'm okay getting, I'm the kind of person if I'm okay getting berated, right? Like I've been told so many times in my life that we shouldn't be doing something, that we're too small for a deal, that we don't have enough information, that we don't have enough money, right? I mean, people have been telling me and us as a company that, ever since I've been here, and yet we just keep getting stuff done. It's like it's water out, water under the bridge for us. We just keep going, it rolls off our back, and we find the people who are interested and who do want to continue that relationship.
That's awesome, bro. I love that story. And, something comes to mind, this quote that every master was once a disaster, right? And that's exactly what you're exemplifying here. And, you're talking about berated, belittled. I remember when I was starting my integrative functional medicine clinic and I was like offering my, wellness packages to people and patients would be like, oh, they would make fun of me. They would just say, hey, who this like this doesn't make sense or all that. Or like when I first started asking people to invest in my company or there's always this like learning curve. And it's about like putting your head down and using that same word, relentlessness. It's like, look, I'll figure out a way. And if I can't figure out a way, we'll make the way. Right. And that, this mental armor that we're creating, this, and David Goggins calls it spiritual calluses. Create the spiritual calluses in your brain and you withstand the onslaught because at some point you will be victorious if you persist. And so I love that, bro. So let's talk about how do you balance being super dad, running some of those real estate companies you do, traveling and all other stuff that you do? Like, how do you balance it all? What's your secret time management strategy?
Oh man, the secret is there is no secret, right? For me, what I try and do and the golden rule that I've had over the last 6 years, because like the first company I went in right out of college, like I said, was Ernst and Young, which is very anybody who knows, right? It's a pretty time consuming position. During busy season, which usually lasts 4 to 5 months, you're working on average usually 15, 16 hours a day. And so what I determined through that period was that I would be 100% present with whatever I'm doing at that time. And that's how I get the most done, right? So like when I'm in the mornings, I get to work usually at around 9, but in the mornings when I'm home with my kids, I do not open up my emails generally, and I try and spend as much time as I can with my kids. When I'm exercising, when I'm doing my workout, I'm currently doing boxing classes of all things, and it's awesome, right? But I am fully committed to my boxing class in that 1 hour period. When I get to work, I am fully engaged, right? I'm not on social media. I'm not looking up YouTube videos, right? I am fully engaged in what I'm doing. And I find that I'm infinitely more productive in all aspects of my life, even when they feel out of balance a little bit, right? Sometimes I have to work more, sometimes I get to work less. But no matter if I'm working more or less, whether I have 5 hours with my kids at night or I have 1 hour with my kids at night, when I am fully engaged, right? They're fulfilled, I'm fulfilled. And that's really been my secret. You'll find that with me, there's a lot of times, right? Sometimes text goes unanswered with me, or it takes me a couple of days to respond. It's not because I don't care. It's not because I don't want to be responsive, but it's because I'm fully in the moment of whatever I'm doing at that time.
I love that, man. That's awesome. There's a book I read called by Og Mandino called "The Greatest Salesman in the World," and he talks about to be married both to your business and to your family and to your health. You at each stage of what you're doing, you essentially divorce everything when you're with that person or with that object or with that person with that goal. And so to if you if you separate yourself from that during each of the phases of life, you're allowed to be married to all of it at some point. So uh, the other concept is time blocking, right? You figured out to master time blocking. When you're in a time block dedicated to children, it's all for that children, and or dedicated to work, you're all about work. And the number one book on time blocking is The One Thing, which I don't know if you read that by Gary Keller.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, but it's been one of my favorite books, and I think a lot of people talk the concept. The fact that you exemplified it in that example is beautiful. So, um, what do you think? I have a lot of people here who invest. A lot of physicians. One of the jokes is physicians are horrible investors, and what they do is they make $1 million mistakes. Give me an example of some of the types of things that maybe either is it deals, is it partnerships, is it is believing the hype of an investment deck. What is it that makes people make $1 million mistakes?
Yeah, when I think about $1 million mistakes and the people who make those, usually what ends up happening, I kind of go into two different categories there. I go into people who don't understand what they should know. They don't know what they don't know, and therefore they just default to what everyone else or what somebody else tells them. Right? That's kind of one category. The other category is the too good to be true group. Right? It's the group that gets enamored by some high return, right? Not necessarily Bernie Madoff, but we're talking, 60, 70, 80% returns. It's going to be amazing. Give me your money and it's going to come back to you in 4 days, double what it was. I just need it for 4 days for XYZ, right? Those are the two that I find that a lot of physicians, a lot of other groups are most susceptible to. And a lot of it boils down to that first problem of you just don't know what you don't know. Right. And so what I find is that the best thing that you can do as a high income earner, as a physician, right? If you're saying, look, I don't necessarily have the time or the energy to dedicate like I need to understanding about investing, right? Which I think everybody needs to spend some time on it. Then what you need to do is you need to find a person or a group of people that you can surround yourself with who you trust, who do understand, right? That's how you avoid those mistakes. It's always the one-off partnerships. I invested with this one person that, I saw something from some acquaintance and they're going to make tons of money on it, right? Or I clicked this ad and it told me I was going to triple my money in 6 months. Those are oftentimes the things that I see get people the most. And so you need to be able to have that group, that person that you can look to and say, look, I trust you. I've done my research on you. I don't have to know everything in the entire world, but I know everything I need to know about you, or as much as I can about you or this group. And you can follow them into the investing world, into the investing battle. They can often, sometimes that's a financial advisor, sometimes that's, a private investment group, whatever the case may be, but it's garnering that trust that can lead you forward. Those $1 million mistakes, I've seen them in partnerships, I've seen them in stock investments, I've seen them in about everything you can see them in. And I've heard a lot of the horror stories being in the business that I'm in, and I'm sure you have too, dealing with the number of investors that we deal with each and every day. And so for me, that's really the keys. You got to find the people that you trust and that know what they're talking about, and surround yourself with those people.
Yeah, I think my top three takeaways in making good investments is, uh, you need to study, right? Lack of specialized knowledge will lead to failure. Even if you're not going to be the main operator on whatever investment you're going into, you got to learn about that industry. Number two is a business plan, or business plan slash business systems. You need to have an accurate business plan. You got to vet that business plan and make sure, hey, is all the nuances, is all the uncertainties, as much as you can, have you mitigated all that? And number three is a team, like you talked about, the team you trust, credible, maybe have a track record that you can believe in, because not every team is not going to be right 100% of the time, but overall, if they have a reasonable track record, they can make things work. And what I've seen bad people mess up a good deal, and I've seen good people salvage a bad deal. So it really is based on that team. So that's awesome, bro. Let's talk about some of the strategies that you're using right now in this real estate market to find really good deals. Like, are all the good deals done, and should we just sit back and just pray and maybe take it easy until 2023, or should we still look for projects?
So I get asked this question pretty much weekly, right? By whether I'm on a podcast or whether it's an investor. Um, and the answer is almost cliche because you hear it so much, right? There's always deals out there in every market. You can find them. Now, not to say that sometimes they're harder to come by than others, but there's definitely always deals to be had in pretty much every single market that exists. Now, what we do specifically and what we're doing specifically, we leverage very highly our relationships, right? We're in a fairly niche business, right? In real estate development, there's a lot of real estate developers, but there's a lot less real estate developers than there are, financial advisors or other industries, right? And so real estate in particular is also it's a little bit old school, right? Uh, it is a little inelastic in the fact that there are deals to be had. There's stuff that happens. You're not in a public market, right, where you have this invisible hand that's constantly moving things to the market value all the time. And so we leverage our relationships significantly. We have a lot of great relationships with brokers, with landowners, with other real estate sponsors and operators, and that is 99% of what we do and how we find property comes through that network. And that's kind of what getting back to the team, right? Investing, whether you're a hardcore real estate, developer and sponsor, or whether you're just interested in investing into real estate as a limited partner or buying a rental home, that team is really what's going to make it or break it for you, and that network and who you surround yourself with. So that is how we're finding almost all of our deals. That plus a proven track record, to show that, hey, you can close on a $4 million property, a $9 million property, a $2 million property, so on and so forth. Those two things, combine those, and we're to a point where we get more deals to look at than we can do right now.
Yep. Yeah. I think we're right there with you at Viking Capital. There's a lot of opportunities once you prove yourself. Now, you said something interesting. You said it was due to your leveraging of your relationships. And I know you've been very powerful. For example, the relationship me and you have was from me being on your podcast, and boom, we're gonna probably end up doing a project together. Let's talk about what advice you would give someone looking to expand their network and their partnerships, whether it's in real estate or even outside. Like, let's say they work at Ernst and Young, or they work at a hospital and clinic, and they may want to go into administration. They want to become a chief medical officer. They may want to become CEO of the hospital one day. They need to learn to network and have prove powerful relationships. Potentially, they're working in medicine, but now they're starting a side hustle, and they need to learn either to get investors, clients, or even patients. What's your strategies for networking and partnerships?
Yeah, so this goes back to my days when I was in college and I was being recruited for the big four accounting firms, right? I got a master's in accounting. There's a big recruiting process that goes on with all of those firms. And um, I they have a ton of events, right? Because they're trying to recruit you. They have all these events, and I would talk to all the other students at the time. Hey, you going to this? And they always seemed to say no, right? They were never going to the events. It was pretty sporadic when a lot of them would go. And I made it a key point. I went to every single event, right? And my two keys to networking is one, be present, right? In order to establish a network, you have to be there, right? You have to be at the event. You have to be on the call. You have to be whatever that means. You have to be available and present to whoever you're trying to network with. And maybe you don't even know who you're trying to network with, but you got to go to the event or to the workshop or whatever it may be that has the type of people you think you should be networking with, right? So that is the first thing that I have to say, because when you do that, you start to feel kind of like you're everywhere, right? You're showing up at all these things. You're starting to see people again and again, right? So that is my first key to developing a network, right? The next thing that I would say to developing a network, people people surround themselves with people they like. They do business with people they like. So you have to be present and you have to be likable, right? And if you're not likable, that's fine. You might look at yourself and say, "Hey, I'm an introvert. I'm not one to just go up and talk." Well, I'm not. I know a lot of amazing salespeople that are introverts, right? I know a lot of people who are really likable, who are total and utterly introverts. It drains them to go talk to people, but guess what? They still do it, and they are great at it, in fact. And those are like baseline. Those are the two things that you have to do. You'll find that if you're just there and you're likable, guess what? Maybe it takes you 3, 4, 5 interactions with somebody, but that person is going to start asking questions, right? That person is going to start getting interested in you and who you are and what you're trying to do. And that to me sets the foundation for everything else. I hear people say all the time, well, you got to bring something to the table. You know what? I have people approach me all the time who they're trying to bring something to the table. But guess what? If I don't know you and I don't like you yet, I don't necessarily really care. I mean, what you have to bring to the table better be amazing, right? For me to skip past the I don't know you and I don't like you yet, right? And so those are the two things. I think when you do those two things and you do them well, everything else will start to fall into place. You'll start to see opportunities arise. I mean, if you're trying to network and you're trying to let people know that, hey, you're trying to run this hospital, right? You want to be the person in charge of running this hospital. Well, who are the people that make that decision, right? Who are the people around there? What are they going to? Because guess what? If they don't know your name, they're probably not going to recommend you to run the hospital. So they have to know who you are. You have to be present. And if they don't like you, guess what? You're probably not going to get to run the hospital either. So those are the two things that I say. If you're doing those two things right, you can look at steps 3 through 100 if you want, but it pales in comparison to those two things.
Yeah, I love how you kept that very simple. I mean, those powerful things that you just mentioned, it's a game changer. And I want to just stack on what you're saying. I think likability, that trust, and being present is huge. And what I found is also proximity is power. If you're in the room, then you get to potentially be part of the decision, right? If you're not in the room, you're not going to be part of the decision. So be close to the power brokers, the power makers of whatever industry you're in. And finally, rapport building. When you build a rapport, you build a likability, potentially you exchange information. What I've noticed, the superstar people who rapidly build networks versus the ones who take a long time, is the power of the follow-up. How many times have you gotten a business card, a contact, an email, a phone number, but you did nothing with it? And I'll be honest, I'm guilty of this as well. So take that information and do something with it within 24 hours, latest 48 hours, because it goes from being a warm lead to eventually a cold lead. So you want to act quickly. So, man, this is
completely agreed.
You're just dropping gems and pieces of amazing information. Thank you so much, Michael. Let me ask you a question. And I ask this for a lot of my listeners. I mean, a lot of my podcast guests, but what's the impact you want to have on the world?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I actually just got asked that question probably about a month ago. And it took me, luckily I was on a 7-hour car ride when I got asked. So I had plenty of time to think about it. And the conclusion that I came up with, and what I've determined is what I'm trying to accomplish in my life. I want to be able to have an impact on the world. And what I mean specifically by that, right? I want to be someone who their opinion, their voice is respected just in a manner that I can actually affect change, right? I look at let me back out a little bit and talk about Utah, because Utah is a little bit different than some of the other states, right? But Utah, there are a select number of people and groups in Utah that if you get them together, they can do pretty much anything, right? I mean, they can move mountains in Utah. That's how the Utah Jazz came to be. That's how every sport, sports rarely are flocking to Utah, right? But you get these 10 people in a room who can move mountains. And when they move mountains, they're usually moving them for the good of the people around them, right? And that's where I'm trying to get in my life. That's the impact I'm trying to have in the world. Is I personally can say I've benefited from these 10 to 15 people and groups that I've never met in my life, but their influence and their ability to influence those around them have really affected me for the better and made my life significantly more enjoyable, significantly better off than it would have been without them. And like I said, there's probably even some of those groups that I don't know about. And that's really my goal, right? I want to be able to enact real change and create real impact based on the things that I'm doing and the influence that I have. And that's really the goal for me and what I'm trying to do, on the world.
That's awesome, man. Kudos to you. And I see you doing that sooner rather than later, man. So well done. Can't wait to see you again in Phoenix and in the western part of the country as we go out there. And with that, guys, continue to be phenomenal. And before we leave our listeners, can you tell them where they can find out more about you?
Absolutely. So you can reach me a couple different places. Our website is overlandgroupinc.com, and we got all sorts of websites. There's overlandcapitalcorp.com, there's overlandconstruction.com, right? So there's a lot of those. Any of the listeners who are trying to reach out to me directly as well, you can reach out at info@overlandcorp.com. That's a monitored email, and that anything that's relevant or needs my attention gets sent directly to me. I spend a lot of time talking with people and answering questions about different things that they have, especially about real estate development, things like that. So I'm always happy to talk about any of those kind of things.
That's awesome, man. Michael, thank you for being on the show. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And until next time, continue to be phenomenal. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Limitless MD. If you found value from this episode, I encourage you to share this episode with a friend and let me know by leaving a review. For more information, make sure you check out the links in the show notes below or simply visit vikramraya.com. So until next time, my friends, be phenomenal.